No dobra, ruszamy. Dzień dobry.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome cordially. This is Decarbonisation, RES's nuclear energy panel. This is a very topical question. 661 grams CO2 for every kilowatt hours of power generated. In French system, emission rate 32 grams. In Germany, 250, which is 50% less. At the same time, we have the fresh report IPCC. Without shade of doubt, the climate crisis is speeding up. We can see the Siberia's forest on fire, catastrophic floods in China and Germany. Decarbonisation is our duty. We are going to speak about it with our fantastic guests. Ecological activist, a frontman from Greenpeace, and now advisor in Szymon Hołownia's movement. We've got Jakub Wiech, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Energy24, the author of numerous publications, and Global Warming Green Right textbook. Only recently it has been published. From Krakow, Professor Marcin Urbaniak. Welcome, Professor. Bioethics of Environment. Hello and welcome. And social activist, the author of the publication on social aspects of climate catastrophe. Ladies and gentlemen, as a warm-up, first question. Nuclear power, is there a place in the Polish system for this kind of power generation, for nuclear energy? Katarzyna. I'm having a coming out at the moment. Sorry for sighing. These are many questions I've been dealing with for many years. I am convinced that the principles of my generation, grassroots generation, ambitious transformation, and crisis we are in are burning problems, important problems, not any kind of top to bottom attitudes or something that was created when we had nuclear power associated with disarmament. It needs to be reviewed. I'm afraid of the energy project. When I have Minister Czarnek being the president of the project. But in Poland, we need a very well prepared, broadly addressed plan to give up on coal with a number of alternatives. I'm not a professional into energy, but into social perception, social change. As of today, I am not. Well, we cannot say we don't have place for nuclear energy. I don't know whether we have place for today's team in power who would be delivering this ambitious, costly program that can be postponed many years ahead. For sure, I'd like to have it in Poland discussed, to have a wise discussion based on facts and figures and data. And I'm jealous about countries like UK when they create their policies, that when they create their maps to give up on coal, they have a broad scope sectoral attitude. All social consequences, attitudes of the society is rightly checked. Yes, there is a place. It is geological because we've got locations that are available for prospective locations of the nuclear power plants. Social one, we've got the social consent which has been confirmed by the Ministry of Energy tests. 60% of Poles are for nuclear power plants built in Poland. This is visible in the parliament. So if the United Right and Representation is one of the proponents of nuclear energy, adding Confederation that is also for it, Razem that is also for it, we can see that the majority is for it. This is the representation of the nation. There is a systemic place. We can look at this process-wise. The Climate Committee at the Polish Academy of Sciences opinion is also confirmed. Poland needs nuclear energy to have a transformation in a safe way to lower emissions. And we've got the situation, we have great contribution of coal in energy mix, so we are one of the rare in Europe. So we need to replace this stable generation power assets so that we jump to low emissions. Nuclear energy is right for it. Speaking about Minister Czarnek, he is supposed to be a delegate of the investor, the Ministry of Education and Science, at the HTGR project. So these are research ones, nothing to do with the Polish nuclear project and the aesthetic of nuclear power. This is something that Polish science will be dealing with. We keep our fingers crossed for this, but this is a different track. So let's not merge two things together. There are two different planes. Concluding, yes, very much indeed. Not only do we have the plans, but there is also burning need to take into consideration the nuclear power generation energy mix. You were speaking about a number of themes, but we'll be returning to this. But this question goes to Professor. It's hard to anything to that, because the four speakers, Mr. Wiech, have exhausted the topic. There is a place when we speak about political sphere, economic sphere, like Zygmunt Solos, Michał Sołowów airing out their opinions. There is a mature and well-considered activity to build small modular reactors. Finance-wise, Poland can afford nuclear energy. Speaking about the cost of reactors, socially wise, I'm not as optimistic as Mr. Wiech. Despite the statistics, in social opinion, there are different myths and narratives associated with the threats. Fear, worries, anxiety. Rarely do we reflect in an informed way. Rarely do we have a dialogue to remove the myths of the dangers, which is simply associated with the failure in Chernobyl, Fukushima, or radioactive refuse. Despite the statistics, still the general public remains divided, and I hope that the narratives associated with this burning need to switch for nuclear energy and to decarbonize will result in more moderate narratives and will dispel doubts amongst everyday consumers who are not experts, who are not educated in this field, who swiftly associate a nuclear silo with a danger, and narratives which persuade out the doubts of scientific milieus that still have doubts, despite different reports of IPCC, despite Paris Treaty, and all kinds of UNO's associated activities in relation to energy transformation. This is a wish to me and also listeners to change the narratives, to have fewer doubts.
The fears you are talking about, we will get back to those. But let me get back to what Kuba said. The research that shows that most of Poles support nuclear energy in Poland, but the majority regards the particular idea. However, when the question is, would you like to have the power plant located in your vicinity, the support goes much below 50%. That's a problem of like it but not in my backyard solution. Question to Katarzyna and the professor: how to talk about nuclear energy, how to persuade people, how to remove those myths of fear and anxiety that are present. People have the right to be afraid, and people have the right to democracy. Therefore, any investment and projects that involve social sciences and what we are afraid of must have their place in democracy. Many projects that can be implemented in countries like China, where the central governance changes the reality in an instant, would be impossible here in Poland. This is one of the factors that make me not that big enthusiast of talking about nuclear energy, especially by this governing team. The Czarnek would be only theoretically in the project. When we speak of nuclear energy, we should talk about which generation of systems we should install. I would like Poland to use the most up-to-date solutions, and I strongly do not believe this government that they can build anything without wasting loads of money, without hurting any local authority on the way. How to talk? Well, I would like to have an honest conversation. There is no technology as the only technology could solve our challenges in the climatic crisis. Helium used for cooling the recent technology that is generated high temperature gas-cooled reactors. If we do not change the consumption way, the fact that we do not catch the used heel, we will have enough of it until 2090. If everything goes well, Jakub, I don't believe it, then the Polish technology would be implemented in 2033. And Poland is lucky enough to be the only country in the European Union which now is obtaining helium. But that is a challenge, just like access of those elements used in technologies of renewable sources. Also, the atomic energy has its restrictions. If you talk honestly, without protectional approach, it's the essence. Professor, how to combat myths and fears? Well, Katarzyna is fully right. Opt for building trust of the public to experts and specialists, and to show, first of all, the scientific facts that say what the reactors look like, fourth generation reactors, that they are safe to the maximum, they generate minimum waste of nuclear waste, that if there is a malfunction in the reactor, they will switch off. There is no such risk as it happened in Chernobyl in 1986, showing that structural faults whose effect we experienced in 1986 are minimized to the minimum by scientific development, that the failure of the cooling system can be avoided, and how we can avoid it. As compared to Fukushima, well, we have no earthquakes, we have no tsunamis. How to honestly speak that we are not at risk with radiation diseases or radiation at all, that we can cope with radiation waste using the transmutation of the fuel and using it in the next fuel cycle to talk. Do not be protectional, claiming we enter the Pątnów near Konin, where the coal power plant is finishing its operations. We will modernize the infrastructure, ignoring the local environment. We should show the people, the local people, that the area around the plant, nuclear power plant, is safe enough that they are not in immediate danger. Show examples from Slovakia, Machowce power plant, how much of energy from the reactors can be stored and used, what are the advantages. But indeed, people have the right to know, and they can be afraid. And the lack of trust, negative narrations are circulating, they are sustained. And due to those tragic events 30 and 10 years ago, and considering the pop culture messages up to disaster movies and documentaries, they rather do not create a positive PR for power, nuclear power generation. If somebody watched some TV series from streaming platforms, but they show technology from 40 years ago, and it shows human errors, errors in supervision, operators' errors that should not be multiplied in new generation reactors. Building trust, speaking the honest truth based on facts, and looking for a dialogue, not treating the locals and the public in general who are interested in the nuclear energy in a superior way. Building a dialogue. So a clear objection against nuclear energy comes from people who care for the environment and environmental crisis. I mean here the largest eco organizations like Greenpeace or WWF. Why their attitude? How do you think, Kuba? Well, this is a very complex question. I wouldn't like to generalize, but we can put it in a synthetic way. Most of the environmental organizations that deal with environmental protection and climate were created when nobody spoke of the global warming as threat number one, but everybody focused more on the environmental aspects. Then nuclear energy was presented as something wrong. So those environmental organizations initially were anti-atomic, then pro-environmental, but this anti-atomic thinking remained. If they change their narration, they would need to admit they were telling stupid things, harming than helping. But this anti-atomism is still living in the pro-environmental movements that is contrary to the science. Just have a look at the publications of the Climate Committee at the Polish Academy of Science, the government sources. We reach a strange situation that the pro-climate organizations listen to the scientists in the terms of global warming, but won't listen in respect of nuclear energy. That's strange. It's involved into political narration for states who use those arguments to justify their own activities, where we see nuclear energy to be terminated before coal energy, but which is stupid from the environmental point of view, but matches the policy in the country. Belgium closes nuclear energy but opens gas power plants, which is recarbonizations, but it works. If I could answer the previous question, because it was pretty important how to speak about atomic energy. Well, we have to be honest. That is obvious. We generally should be honest and frank, but we should speak simple language. We are here in Łódź. Where is the nearest nuclear generator, in your opinion? In Świerk, 120 kilometers away from here, near Warsaw in Otwock. It's been there for such a long time. 1972, I believe. Its name is Maria. It's a small testing reactor, 32 megawatts, not feeding the grid, but the reaction is ongoing. And it is a safe unit operating 25 kilometers away from the Warsaw center. Never, ever caused any harm. We didn't have Chernobyl in Warsaw. We will never have it. There are no more Chernobyl reactors elsewhere. Current reactors, even if we repeat the errors from Chernobyl 1-to-1, will never act the same. You need to speak about it. You need to dispute the organization who can do a lot of good things in biodiversity or in decarbonization, in other issues than nuclear energy. If they criticize nuclear energy because of Chernobyl or because nuclear energy is not decarbonizing, which is contrary to the truth. Slovakia, thanks to nuclear energy, will have non-emission power generation. So it's a crime against the environment, considering the incoming climatic disaster. Well, nuclear discussions are always full of emotions. It's one of the most conflict-generating topics, and hardly ever they find any compromise solutions, as Katarzyna mentioned a moment before, and what she pointed to. So the question comes, are we able to find, with those eco-organizations, some field of compromise? You've been a frontwoman of Greenpeace for a long time. Is there a will to find a compromise? Well, let me get back to the moment when Greenpeace or WWF were created. That was a moment when there was Cold War and huge risk of an atomic conflict. And I strongly relate those two facts. The organizations quote numerous arguments, also the need to include scientists from various fields into leaving carbon processes. I would be more happy if we talked about nuclear energy versus renewables, or keep coal for a moment longer to prevent gas systems from expansion, that it takes place after we revise our awfully written energy policies, which are very bad documents, and I will always say that the civic society and NGOs do have their place in this conversation. I don't know if Greenpeace or WWF will admit with thought the issue over and now we can see it in a different way. They do a lot of good things in many fields, and frankly speaking, if it was not for NGOs, then this great movement of scientists could get to the mainstream. In Poland, the climatic debate soared when Greta appeared. So we would like all of us, the NGOs, scientists, and the government, sit together at the issue. And instead of being hyper enthusiastic, we want a solution, we want an answer. But we as people tend to standardize reality by how we can use it. There is no one single technology that can serve as a solution. Then we need to stabilize renewable energy. None of us is an atomic physicist as we are here. Yes, that's true.
Listen up. Greenpeace may be right. It might be too late for nuclear energy, as they say. Many years too late. If we were to have it in 2020, 2033 or 35, and we are to wait with all the other things, why should we be waiting? Technologies might be developed. We might have this energy storage breakthrough. Hydrogen technologies may develop. They do not cause so many controversies. Cuba. Decarbonization is not a beauty contest any longer. We do not have the luxury of choosing technology to decarbonize. We cannot afford waiting. Delaying this kind of efficient tool that is nuclear power engineering, putting it aside because it takes long to build, it's expensive, it's giving up on the most efficient way to decarbonize. Glider is cheaper than a plane, but if you want to fly over the ocean, use a regular plane. This decarbonization is a trip over the Atlantic Ocean. In Europe, you wait long for delivering the energy power plant. China can do it for years, and there is no democracy in China. This metaphor with a plane over the Atlantic is bad. Instead of large-scale energy, shouldn't we radically speed up with renewable energy sources? This might be the place to look for. Not this one. Renewable energy sources do not meet the energy demand. We've known it for many statistics. This is an undeniable fact. Indeed, we need an energy mix to the right proportion of RESs that are supported with power engineering, but giving up on hypotheses, we may come up with something new. We may speed up PV panels. There might be wind, sun shining as if in Africa. This is a suicidal kind of thinking. Second of all, we are in social bubbles. NGOs, they have made a great contribution for this combat for biodiversity, recovering or saving biosphere, and organizations that are into decarbonization and greenhouse gases limiting. These social bubbles, they have a group of activists, people who are interested in these organizations, not necessarily do we have a dialogue with the scientific milieus. Sometimes we are invited, we join campaigns or initiatives where we speak, but robust cooperations of ecologists, social organizations that save animals, that save biodiversity, save climate, this cooperation with scientific milieus would show that we detach the myths from nuclear energy, that we can couple it in a mix with RESs. We do not have to give up on PV panels, wind generation. On the other hand, we would show that this is not decarbonization. It would show that we do not have to support ourselves with coal, so we stick to the same situation. Cooperation, not giving up on RESs, not saying that they are senseless, but looking for common dialogue, removal of myths, removal of fears against nuclear energy, and robust work on energy mix. If over 10 years' time we're able to create small modular reactors, this energy mix would show that organizations' activities has not been false. They were wrong partially, but they have this kind of personal courage to admit to mistake, and scientists' voice would be more disseminated. They could speak an easy to comprehend language for the layman. It would not be a narrative that is difficult to understand. The society would understand. They would learn about these complicated things in a simple way. We would change the negative attitude, cooperation, looking for dialogue, combination of RESs with nuclear energy, and we wouldn't be getting into this cul-de-sac of saying we cannot afford it. 100 billion Polish zlotys is the program. What we spent 9 years ago on Euro 2012, 100 billion, so we can afford it. We have scientific backup, only goodwill, cooperation. Sometimes you need to admit that 30 years ago the situation was different, socially and politically wise. Sometimes we don't have the power to say that we are mistaken.
You spoke today about SMRs. We see that business decided not to wait for the politicians and wait for this rapid growth of energy in front of us by building their own small sources. Can those be a solution to replace?
Technology-wise, we have small nuclear reactors that are modular. For example, submarines as a main power supply. But owing to their specificity, because this is the military that serve them, you cannot transplant them one-to-one into power engineering. We are waiting for the first projects. In the USA, for example, there are the most advanced ones, and they are going to be certified there. It's a song of the future, the same discussion as we had a moment ago. If SMRs are on the way, people can switch them on to supply synthos or work normally on the grid, but we cannot afford any delay. And to our discussion, I don't want our viewers to leave the room convinced that we are speaking about alternatives. Nuclear and RESs, both, they are inseparable, like the efficiency, a circular economy, small elements of a huge solution, which is the answer to a comprehensive end-to-end problem of a climate change. I'd like to add that I feel awkward in a state that is unable to calculate it. There is no strict cooperation between exact sciences and social sciences. Why are we living in the country where you announce the project, the program without scripts and scenarios? I want calculations. I want this to be robust. I don't want to have it like this, that we limit energy generation. We live in a country where we cannot have collective prosumers. We cannot be brought together. We cannot build cooperatives. Starting next year, it won't be that easy, that simple, to put PV panels on your roof. And I agree that we don't have time. And I'm afraid that this government, well, I cannot trust it in many fields, that the government will be using the delay technique, telling cock and bull stories on how much they spend money on a specific project with the end date in the technology that is being developed. The worst possible scenario is lawmaking and technology development and our capacity to pull our forces together to have energy cooperatives. We are waiting for this nuclear power to come and save us. We are not waiting for salvation from the nuclear energy, but cooperation, RESs. This is very important. In a public debate, they are juxtaposed, which triggers unwanted emotions. Can I ask Kuba a question? All right. Let's imagine we are not China. Still, let's imagine a situation you cannot find a self-government that cooperates, that there is a good communication, because, as you mentioned, it's not in my backyard attitude. How to solve it? We found self-governments of this time, Żarnowiec, Kopalin and other places. But these are not ideal locations. The first two suggested locations, yes. Speaking officially, there are two locations. We know that there is actually one. Considering information activities from PGEJ1, Polish power plants, nuclear power plants, according to the research, the percentage of the people for nuclear power plants is higher than Poland's average, which confirms what happened in Japan after Fukushima. The commune's inhabitants that they were home for nuclear power plants were for nuclear supplies compared to those that were devoid of them, because they had benefits from the fact that the units were there. Speaking about the incomes of the communes and infrastructure that had to be modernized, road infrastructure, so that they have a nuclear power plant, higher services standards, more possibilities to develop. So, not in my backyard is a myth. It's a living thing, but still, when you analyze it point by point, when you have a targeted action, when it is supposed to act, many things you can do there. It's not possible to convince all of you. So you found a backyard in Poland whose inhabitants are interested. Japan has got a different attitude. Japan is turning to nuclear power generation. Jakub Wiech presented a situation that we are dreaming about, me and Katarzyna. Those responsible for construction of a nuclear power plant enter a dialogue. They present pros and cons. The development of infrastructure brings about not only hypothetical dangers of failures, but you can use the fact that there are reactors in the vicinity because well-being of inhabitants is better. But if you have a context that is real, not only do you show respect, but also it dispels doubts, alleviates fears, and gives you the sense of security that investor has seriously treated the business investment, but also social context. The inhabitants were being taken care of. Their opinion is taken in consideration. I want to have it in Poland. Investors come and talk to people, talk to inhabitants. Hypothetically, what they can lose, what they can gain. Some companies have made this kind of endeavor. We've got 60 seconds to end of the game. So are there any questions? I've got a question. There was a concept of Jan Kulczyk to buy electricity from Ukraine. Can we buy from other countries if we have this kind of deficit to make it economically feasible? Foreign policy is very important. We were able to have a conflict with Germany, Czechia. We don't have too many allies, and private business is taken away, saying that we'll be cooperating with Kaliningrad. We are wondering where to go to, who's going to be our partner. But there is one emission that knows no borders, and we've been doing such things. We had Turów failure, Bełchatów. Thanks to common energy market, we're able to alleviate the problem, but this is by no means a solution that we find our bearings as a country. Economy-wise, it's okay, but strategically-wise, okay. If you import it from foreign countries, you have the basic load unit that you have no control over. A foreign country, Kaliningrad, like, you give Russia control over your energy sector, or Ukraine has got impact on Polish sector. Be it Ukrainian and Belarus powers are down, like Ostrowiec is believed to be the potential prospective supply. If they have an impact, what is happening in the power grid system, it's dangerous. Simply speaking, no. Thank you very much. Very interesting conversation. Thanks to all of you and to our panelists. Thank you. I'd like to thank you for this being a heated discussion, but it was pleasant, to the point. Thank you. So we were trying to put ourselves as reactors.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise.
Now boarding flight 1215.
You may now kiss the bride.
Work is different now. We're commuting less, virtually meeting more. Separating work life and life can feel challenging. It's easy to forget that to thrive at work, we need to take care of ourselves. Microsoft Viva Insights offers new experiences to balance productivity and well-being. Personal insights help you stay at your best and most productive. Add structure to your remote workday by opting for a virtual commute, carving out time to have a productive start in the morning and mindfully disconnect in the evening. Protect time before your calendar fills up for focused work, coaching, and learning. Take regular mental breaks with Headspace, tapping into dedicated moments of mindfulness. Use emotional check-ins to tune into your day-to-day mindset and well-being. Strengthen team bonds with Stay Connected experiences that prompt you to praise collaborators, schedule one-on-ones, and follow up on pending commitments and outstanding tasks. Insights for managers and leaders offer windows into how work happens and the impact on employee well-being. Identify where teams may be isolated and take action to break down silos. Quickly discover opportunities to prevent burnout, promote coaching and development, and boost engagement. You and your team's well-being is important, especially in times of change. Taking care of one another allows you to thrive and your organization to build resilience. Experience how new well-being insights in Viva can help.
Liberté Talks. To, co ważne. Seria Liberté Talks realizowana jest dzięki wsparciu Google oraz Państwa darowizną. Na podcast z klimatem zaprasza Jakub Wiech.